I'd like to briefly summarize two areas of our findings. Who are the victims, and why are older persons more likely to fall for scams? So first, who are the victims of consumer fraud? Well, since 2003, AARP and its research partners have completed 5 studies on lottery fraud victims. The most recent was done in 2011, which is called the National Victim Profiling Study, which surveyed 1,500 consumers and over 700 victims of fraud themselves. This study showed that while consumer fraud can happen to anyone, some people are more likely to be taken than others. Lottery fraud victims, for example, are more likely to be women who are over age 70, divorced or widowed, have less formal education, have less income, and may have more cognitive impairments than others in their age cohort. From a behavioral standpoint, our research has shown that lottery fraud victims are more likely to listen to sales pitches over the phone from unknown callers, read advertising solicitations that come through the mail or email, and they are less likely to be signed up for the National Do Not Call list through the Federal Trade Commission. And I'm going to provide you a few quick highlights from this work to give you a sense of why it is. We've looked at what persuasion tactics are used by scammers to successfully con victims, what is going on psychologically with victims that make them vulnerable, and is cognitive impairment a factor in fraud victimization? So on the persuasion tactics, AARP has analyzed hundreds of tape recordings of con men pitching elderly victims. 3 specific persuasion tactics have been found most frequently in fraud schemes: offering enormous wealth, using scarcity to create urgency, and using fear to frighten the victims. Fear has been used over and over again to literally scare older victims into handing over their money. What are some of the psychological factors? Well, we've learned that as we age, we tend to focus on positive events and ignore negative events as a coping strategy. If a con man calls an older person and tells he or she that they've just won $8 million, there's a tendency to focus on the winnings and ignore the more negative possibilities that this could be a scam. This could also be a contributing factor to why older people are more victimized. On cognitive impairment, it's also no secret that as we age, some of us experience diminished cognitive capacity. In 2009, AARP hired highly skilled geriatric social workers to go into the homes of lottery victims and give them a series of cognitive tests. Close to 80% were found to have some cognitive loss, which is a much higher rate than from others in this particular age group. This research helps us understand who are most vulnerable and what education strategies AARP can put in place that may be the most effective. AARP Vermont is holding forums like this across the state over the next couple of months to help educate our members and people in communities on what to look for and what to look out for so that they don't become the next victim of a consumer fraud scheme. Obviously, consumer fraud is a huge and growing problem. At least $40 billion a year, probably more, because we know that much consumer fraud goes unreported. And so our interest here is to make sure our members and the public have the knowledge they need to prevent this from happening to themselves, a loved one, a neighbor, a friend, a family member. And now it's with great pleasure that I'm going to introduce to you Janet Renee, who is the director of the Attorney General's Consumer Assistance Program, to talk to you about what she's seeing specifically here in Vermont. Janet?
Good afternoon. Thank you to the AARP. We're very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you. We were speaking to a group in Bennington this morning, and it was very helpful when we were talking about these issues for people to share incidents that had happened to them. So please, by all means, as I'm talking to you this afternoon, raise your hand, and if you have an experience or an incident that we're talking about that you have information about, we'd love to hear about it. So don't be shy. Please feel free to call me Janet. My name is Janet Murnane, and I'm an Assistant Attorney General, and my job for the last 3 months, I'm very new to it, has been as the Director of the Consumer Assistance Program. And I want to take a minute and tell you about that before we turn to our discussion. Our program is a joint program with the University of Vermont. It's been going on for about 30 years. We're actually housed on the UVM campus. The very last slide is going to give you information on our website and how to contact us. And I think we're unique, in the country in that we use students to help, as free staff, to help us take consumer complaints. So our job at the program is to take consumer complaints, either from an individual or a business as a consumer, against businesses. It could be anything from a service that you've had that you're not satisfied with, the purchase of something from a business, contractor that you are dissatisfied with, any other business that you had a negative transaction with and that you want to have a further discussion with. We try to help you in a letter mediation program. We try to answer your questions and give you information about where to go. And then the attorney part. So we have a database of consumer complaints, and we get a number of calls. We get about 6,000 calls a year from Vermonters with consumers complaints, and we get about 2,700 written complaints from people who want us to pursue mediation for them or look into their complaint. And then the Attorney General's office monitors those complaints. That's part of my job as an attorney to determine if there's a pattern that we need to follow or a significant issue that we want to highlight for the attorneys in Montpelier for enforcement work. So the good news is that we have some young University of Vermont students. We have 15 this semester. They change every semester. Who have never bought a car, and never had a credit card, never bought a house. So they're just learning to be consumers, and they're learning these things by taking our course and then answering the complaints from other Vermonters, and we're getting their assistance. So it's a mutually beneficial program. So please feel free to call and look at our website. There's lots of good information on there. What I'm going to talk to you about today, we can go to the next slide, is consumer fraud. So the state of Vermont has a consumer protection statute, as does the federal government, and the attorneys in my office work on issues related to consumer protection. But today we're going to talk about what are the biggest fraud schemes that we saw at our, we call it the CAP office, Consumer Assistance Program, during 2012. It's not a top 10 list that you want to be on, but I'm going to bring you the top 10 list of fraud and scams that we've seen this past year. I want to talk a little bit about what we can do to avoid those scams, and if, unfortunately, we become victims to those scams, what steps we would recommend that you take. Big pie chart of, you can't see the top one, I don't think, but the first one, which is the big category, which is really the reason for showing this to you, is the biggest category there is phishing, and then working down through, you'll see the other categories. We had about 1,700 complaints total to our office in 2012. And that's a big number, but that is just the number of people who knew about our program and who called to complain. So that is just a small number of the complaints that actually happened. 1,700 complaints just to the Consumer Assistance Program. And we're only one place you can bring a complaint. The federal government has an excellent program at the Federal Trade Commission and its Consumer Protection Division, where they have a similar database. The Better Business Bureau takes complaints. So, interestingly enough, they came out with a top 10 list in 2012, and the kinds of categories virtually mirror the examples that we're seeing in Vermont. And the reason we think that they're very similar, even though we're a very small and rural state compared to some, is that scammers are using technology, and we're all using technology. So scammers are now reaching us by phone, by mail, by email, and for those of you who text, by text. So all of us in every state are being reached in ways that scammers didn't have access to before. So the numbers are going up. We can go to the next slide, Jean. So, scam number one, phishing. And by phishing, what we mean is someone is contacting you and they are looking for your personal information. They are looking for your bank account number. They are looking for your social security number. They're looking for your credit card number. And why are they doing this? They want your money, right? So, phishing is a very broad category, and some elements in it are in all of our categories that we'll talk about. They want your money. So, they're calling you, they're saying, we're calling you to give you a lower interest rate on your credit card. Pick up the phone. How many of you had those calls? You know, every night. You get home, it's on your machine, right? So what happens when you call that? They want to lower your interest rate. You know, you call them, what do they want? They want your credit card number, you know, and they want to charge you something to give you a lower interest rate on your credit card that isn't even your credit card company. So, scam. Another example, it just happened a couple weeks ago. There was a big email and text scam, scandal kind of. And the Federal Trade Commission, again, the federal government agency that does the same work that we do, they were able to actually charge 7 or 8 companies and then the hub who sent out these emails and these texts. And they learned that this one entity sent about 220 million emails and texts out. That's just one of these scammers, one organization. So you can imagine the number that went out there. This one that went out more recently was about gift cards. Hey, you've won a gift card to Walmart or Best Buy or in your store. And it's free. Just you know, respond to this email, respond to this text. Why wouldn't you do that? You know, it's free. Guess what? You know this. We all know this. It isn't free, and it's never going to be free. You got a free tote bag when you came in here today. That's free. But someone calling you and emailing you and texting you, they're not going to give you a free product. So phishing is anybody who's calling you, texting you, emailing you, and wanting your information so they can charge you a fee.
Scammers who will send you something that looks like a legitimate email address from a legitimate company, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think, oh, I have that, I should do that. And most of those companies will not legitimately send you something that asks for information. And what you can always do is Google the real address of that company and get the contact information and ask if they are sending that message. And then, because pretty much you're less at risk if you contact the company than if they cold call you or contact you.
You're singing my tune. You're giving the message that I'm going to give later on too, which is you can always check directly with the company. You can make the call or you can make the email yourself rather than being on the recipient end, because then you can check and make sure that you're getting what the company is supposed to be giving you. Let's go to the next slide. So number 2, top 10 scam, and I should have said phishing if I didn't. We got about 600 complaints just at the CAP office about phishing last year. Unfortunately, some people had actually, sent the money in. Contests, sweepstakes, and lottery scams. We got about 225 of those. These frequently come in the mail, but sometimes they're on the phone. They're also frequently on the phone. And you have won a lottery. Maybe I'm the national lottery company calling you. Maybe I'm an international lottery. By the way, United States citizens can't play on international lotteries, so don't do that. But sometimes they say lottery, sometimes they say sweepstakes, but the message that they're sending you is you have won. It's your lucky day. Okay? You've just hit the jackpot. We've picked you out of all these other names, and you have won anywhere from, it's always a large amount, but anywhere from a couple $1,000s to sometimes $1 million. And especially if they're hitting someone who is in a situation where they could use the money, or they could help someone else with that money, or someone who just says, well, maybe it is my lucky day, and they follow up and they respond, they call the number on the mailing, or they email back, or they talk to the person on the phone. What do you think is the next thing that they're going to be asked to do? Just take a guess.
Send you money.
They're going to be told, this money is there waiting for you, but
We need money.
we need to process that check.
So sometimes they'll tell you a small amount, a couple $100. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a couple thousand, 1,500, but if you're going to get 4 million, 1,500, really, it's not very much, right? So they want a check, or they want a money order. And once you send that money order, you're going to get, you know, $4 million. So you send the check, thinking of all the things that you could do to help people with that money. And then what you get is a request for another check, because that paid the processing fees, but now there's taxes. So they need you to pay the taxes. Now, of course, they don't tell you that the taxes wouldn't be paid to them anyway. Your taxes would have to also be paid to the IRS. But so sweepstakes and lottery scams. On the phone, they're very persuasive. At the beginning, you heard about the Jamaican lottery scams. Fairpoint in Vermont has recently done a big campaign because so many of these were coming in by phone. Mike Smith from Fairpoint, who's one of their executives, has done a lot of work, went to Jamaica to try to work with Jamaican authorities because many of these are coming from the Jamaican area code. And Fairpoint actually has a website, which is bewareof876.com. And 876 is a Jamaican area code. And they learned that so many of these calls were coming in from that number that they created a website to warn people about it. And they are working with Jamaican authorities to try to stop the organized crime organizations in Jamaica who are sending out those calls. Sometimes the scammers have a middleman or a middle person in the United States. Sometimes that person knows they're helping the scammers, and sometimes they're just a victim like everybody else and they think they're just processing checks. So you can't always, just because it's a United States number doesn't mean it's a safe number, but sometimes the scammers use numbers from other countries, and then it's a red flag. Yes, sir?
I noticed that in Florida there's a computer server with a 800 number that's US, but the information goes over into India or China. So I agree
Absolutely.
with you.
You can buy 802 area code numbers, not be a Vermont company. Just bounces off into the 802 and shows up as an 802 number on your phone. So that alone isn't, but obviously if you see a foreign area code and you don't have a friend there, you know that it's a red flag. So the warning is, anybody who wants upfront money for you to collect money, scam. Don't fall for it. And if you do get those mailings or emails, we would love for you to notify us. You can do it by email at the end, we're going to show you, or by a phone call and let us know about it so we can try to keep track. Okay, scam number 3. Bogus computer and tech scams. You and I talked about this when I was coming in. So they work like this. When I started in my job, I was answering the phones, trying to understand what complaints were coming in and making sure I had a good idea of what we were dealing with. And I don't know, just a few weeks ago I took a call from a woman who received a call. They told her it was Microsoft. She has a computer, she uses the computer, but she's not tech savvy, neither am I. A senior. You have a problem with your computer. We're Microsoft, we're calling to, we care about you, so we're calling to help you fix it. So go to your computer and I'm going to walk you through those steps. And I'm going to help you solve this problem so that your computer is not in jeopardy. So she did. She turned on her computer. First, the steps were simple. Then they started to get really complicated. And she tried to say, I can't, this is too much for me. And they're like, no, just, well, you know what, we'll help you. Do this, and I can have access to your computer and I can help you with your computer. I can help you with the fix. So they were obviously trying to get remote access to her computer, which was what you were suspicious of, and so that they could access her computer. Why do they want to do that? Maybe she does her banking online, maybe she has stored a list of her credit card information and her assets. So there's a lot of things in computers that people would want to access in order to steal your money. So, and then they asked for her credit card number so that she could pay them for this, because it was only going to be, I forget what it was $19, $20. Wasn't expensive. especially for all the time this nice person spent on the phone with her, fixing her computer. So she gave them her credit card number so she could pay her bill. And when she got her credit card bill, there was a charge on there not for $19.95, but for several $100s. Plus they had access to her computer. So that is a computer scam. That's just one of the examples. And you never want to give your bank account information over the phone to someone. If you're calling someone, if you're calling a vendor and you want to give your credit card and you know where you're calling, that's great. But if someone's calling you and you don't know that company, you don't know who you're dealing with, never give your credit card. Another example of a computer virus or a computer fraud that's been happening, and this gentleman and I were talking about it, is called malware. And the most recent call I got on that was from the parents of a young teenager who downloaded a lot of information from file sharing networks. So he had software that allowed him to share files so that he could download movies and games and songs and such for free. And there's a number of file sharing networks that you can sign on to. You're agreeing to it, you're signing on, so it's not something you're going to do inadvertently. But a lot of teenagers in particular, I shouldn't pick on them, but a lot of them do it because they want movies and songs and so forth. What they don't realize is that when you sign on to those file sharing networks, that you are allowing people into your computer. They have access into your computer. It's the same way, I'll note, that people who are watching illegal material on the internet, such as pornography, it's the same way that they're caught by police. Because when they're downloading material from file sharing locations, you're letting people into your computer and people can monitor what you're doing. And again, they're doing it because they want to find out your banking information or your anything you stored on the computer that would be useful for them. This particular fraud is that, especially they do it when kids have downloaded something maybe they shouldn't have, or anyone has downloaded something they shouldn't have. All of a sudden you'll see on your screen this red or something really stark screen. Sometimes it has the FBI logo on it. It looks very, very official because you can copy the logo anywhere. And it says, you violated the law and you are going to need to pay a fine. You violated federal law. You're going to need to pay a fine in order to have your computer unlocked. And indeed, because they've had remote access to your computer's been locked. And so you're left thinking, oh my gosh, I violated the law, and what do I do? And of course, they give you a way to pay that $200 fine. Well, that is not the FBI locking your computer. I suppose they could if they really wanted to, I don't know. But it isn't the FBI, it's a scammer who's monitored what you're watching on your computer and has put malware on your computer. So, what we recommend, if you ever have a screen like that happen, it doesn't mean you've done something bad, but if you ever have someone who locks your screen remotely, or you have any kind of warning like that, I recommend that, unless you're very tech savvy, I recommend that you take your computer to a computer professional who can make sure they can remove it without damaging or crashing your computer, and can also get it off of there for you. Yes, sir?
We had a very weird one that I almost fell for in Virginia Beach. We were in a hotel, and somebody called and said, this is the desk downstairs, and we have somehow misplaced the number of your credit card.
Well, I've never heard that one. That's a good one.
Thank goodness the desk down there had passed around a little note to put under your door. The desk down there does not call and ask you for your credit card. We already have it. But I would have done it.
Right.
But you think you know the people, and it's the phone right in your room. But you don't know that somebody can call into that. So it was a pretty sophisticated one. And thank goodness somebody got caught on it, I guess, and told the desk when they found out. So it was a very weird scam.
Thank you. That's a great example. I haven't heard that one, but that's exactly what they do. They're smart and sophisticated enough that they know this seems like reasonable, right? So sometimes you get them from banks that are on your home phone, right? We talked about that, but you think it's your bank. Sometimes they say the name of your bank, like Merchants Bank, a very reputable bank, had an unfortunate, scammers took their name and were calling customers, but random people that might be customers. But frequently they'll just, it says bank, and you think it's your bank. And they're saying, we need to confirm your information, but first, of course, we have to make sure you're our client. And you know, you're thinking, okay, your bank, first of all, your bank doesn't call you. They've got your information. But it's reasonable, sort of in your mind, you're thinking, okay, they're helping me here, they want to protect me. Your bank is not going to call you on the phone and ask you to confirm your bank account information, or to verify your account, or to, you know, double your, you know, get a better interest rate. That's not your bank. That's a scammer. Yes?
We had that kind of thing, and it was the bank.
Well, your banks call you, so tell me what happened to you. Banks do call you, and we'll talk about that too.
That they were doing a security check. They didn't specifically mention the bank. I don't know if it's the bank or the credit card. Actually, it might have been the credit card, but they were doing some sort of a security check.
Right.
And we wouldn't talk to them, and then we got the credit card out and called the company, and they said, yes, they had hired a company to do a security check, and that was not good news to us.
Well, but you still did the right thing, because
Yes.
those aren't always companies that are valid. But your credit card company will call you with fraud alerts. We're going to talk about that on credit card fraud. Because if you have lost your card, or if your card number has been stolen and all these charges start happening, you're going to get a fraud alert call from your credit card company. So it's not that every call you get is a scam, but you need to be able to check. You need to be able to, what this young woman said, you need to be able to call the location yourself and make sure that's who's calling and that you're talking to the right people. Well, when they have suspected fraud coming in, they want to make sure that they're stopping it as soon as possible. So, but the right answer is call them back. Call the number that you know is your bank and call and try to verify it that way. Yes?
I had a situation, I was sitting at my desk at work, and I had gone to the ATM machine when I was working in Manhattan, and I got a call from security, and they said, well, we know you're in New York, you use your ATM, but somebody's using your card in London. So there were like 6 charges were coming in on my account, on my ATM card in London. I had no idea how they would have gotten the number, you know, but Chase Manhattan called me up, and I said, close the account.
Right.
You know, immediately I'll be right there, and I left my office, and I went over to the bank and signed a, you know, fraud application.
Well, why don't I talk about that right now? We won't wait till later. There's a federal, credit cards are a great thing, and one of the reasons they're a great thing is that they carry protection with them for fraud. So if you have used a credit card as opposed to some of the other means we're going to talk about when you're buying something and it turns out to be a fraud, or it turns out you didn't actually authorize that charge, and you, as soon as you know about it, you let your credit card company know, they're going to investigate. If you notify them before any charges are made, you have 0 liability. If you notify them immediately, I think it's 3 days, you can't be charged, you can't be held liable for more than $50, and usually they don't even hold you to that limit because they want you as a customer. So you can say, I didn't charge that, $3,000 worth of sporting goods in New York. I wasn't even in New York. They're going to do an investigation, and ultimately, when they show that it wasn't you, they're going to remove that from your account, and you're not going to be responsible for that. So there's good credit card protections in place through banks and through credit card companies that are banks that are helpful to us all as consumers. And one of the lessons in all of this is, if you ever think you have lost your card or someone's using your card, call them right away, and there's some protections you can put in place with the company that will help you and protect your credit history. Yes?
I have 2 questions. One point is that I know that we have spoken about the fact that you need to really protect these external ATM places because people are using cameras, whereby they are able to have cameras to take look at what your code is. So I was told that, and it happened to someone, and so forth. So that was one thing. But the other is you mentioned malware, and you said that this is a bad thing. So explain to me, because I've seen a certain kind of protection, actually, that comes up. It's called malware. Am I wrong with it?
Malware bites.
What?
Malware bites.
Yes.
It's a protection. I have it on my computer.
Okay. So malware bites is a good thing.
It's a
malware
protection against malware, I think, is what it is. Yeah.
Against malware.
That's what I wanted to say.
Malware, mal meaning bad, is the the thing that comes up that freezes your computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got protection against it. Good to know.
I haven't looked at the whole thing. So, computer scams. Number 3.
We had about 100 complaints last year. So next, number 4, imposter scams. This is a tough one, very emotionally difficult, and this is one that is particularly targeted at seniors. So I haven't gotten the call about the daughter or granddaughter or grandson in trouble, but it's not just the grandparent scam. Sometimes it's you have a friend and they're traveling. How many of you have gotten that? I have.
I just got one.
Now, do you have a friend who's traveling?
Well, she was, but I didn't know if she was, and it was somebody, it's a local jazz vocalist that's very, that travels a lot, that travels. And I got something saying, I was performing in Manila, it was a last minute thing, and it was great, but my cards were stolen, all my cash. I promised to pay you back. And I knew it was, but I also worried about her being there. So what I did do is call some other people.
Great.
That knew her. And
Okay.
they got into her email.
But here's the devious part. Frequently, they know, in fact, there is someone traveling, and you know how? They've looked on the internet. They've spent about 5 minutes, and they found somebody here in your town who's traveling, who's a friend of yours, and they're sending that email to a bunch of people. And so they get one smart consumer, but out of that group of 200 that they send it to, they're just hoping they'll get one hit. Somebody who's worried enough and who either calls and doesn't get the person or somehow can't confirm, and so will send some money. That's all it takes. So how can you protect yourself? You tell your friends that if you need their help, you'll call them or you'll get in touch with them or to check with you before they send you any money. So the other big imposter scam is grandparent scam. And the reason it's called that is because they target grandparents. And why do they do that? Because usually they use the example of a son or granddaughter. So someone very close to you, but someone who you may not be in regular telephone contact with, you may not have seen them recently, they may be off at school, and so they say, I'm off at school, or frequently they say I'm in Canada, and sometimes they've been in an accident, and they need your money because they have a hospital bill. Sometimes they say, I've been arrested, and please don't tell mom and dad. You can't tell mom and dad. There's always a do not tell the family warning to these when it's the grandparent scams, because they don't want you checking. They don't want you calling your friend and finding out. So, and they're urgent. These calls are, there's always anxiety in the voice. So what I was going to say is they use Facebook. One woman who called us said, but they knew my name. My grandson calls me Nana, and they called me Nana. They had other information about this person. The scammers had gone on this kid's Facebook and gotten information and then called the grandmother. And so, she sent money because she was scared. And they always have this sense of urgency to them. I need the money now, and please don't call, please don't call. The other reason why these scams are particularly bad is it's the cases where we have the most multiple transmissions of money. So the nice grandmother sends the money, and then guess what? You get another call. Because now they're out of jail, but now they need money to get home. And so you want to get them home safely, so you send another check or another money order. And typically they're money orders. And money orders, why do the scammers ask you to use money orders? It's gone. Because this money is going out of state, or out of country. It's going to Canada, it's going to Jamaica, it's going to Africa, it's going to places, London, where we can't get it back for you. So one of the reasons we're here today is to try to make you the resource. You can talk to your friends, your family members, you can try to educate people in turn, because prevention is the only thing that works. Once this money is gone, it's gone. We try very hard to do enforcement, and we've worked with the wire transfer companies, and they've been helping to put protections in place. When you send money through Western Union or MoneyGram or another wire transfer company, typically it's through an agent, Hannaford's or Price Chopper or Rite Aid. If you look around, you'll see those. And money transfer is a great thing. It's a legitimate business to get money quickly to someone who may not have a bank account or in another country. But the problem is, so much of the money that goes through Western Union and MoneyGram is scam money, that we have worked with them to persuade them that they have a responsibility to stop the scams, just stop these scams. And so there are some protections in place. Frequently the agents will warn people, especially if there's been more than one money transmission, and say, are you sure you know where you're sending this money? Are you sure you know what's happening here? And sometimes they'll even stop people from sending wire transfers if there's been several in a row. So, but that's the reason why scammers pick it, because the money goes and it's gone and we can't get it back. Well, oh, this slide, I really just put this up here to show you. So this was $84,000 just in 2012, just the amount reported to us that was lost. So again, that is a tiny, that's just Vermont. This is just a tiny amount because we know that only a small number of consumers have reported this to us. So $84,000 lost because people were worried about their family members and someone was, preying on their emotions. So, okay, we can go to the next slide. Are you worried? Are you worried yet? So top 10, number 5 is debt collection scams. We'll talk about another related scam at the end, but this scam is really about companies that will call you at home, harass you, threaten you, repeated phone calls, call your work and say you owe a debt and you need to pay this or you're going to be arrested. You owe this, and if you don't pay it, we're going to ruin your credit history. Pay this now, or we're going to call your work, and they will call your work. And a recent example of this was a woman who called to tell us she knew her husband actually had taken out a loan, a high interest, what we call payday loans, over the internet. So she knew that he had that loan out. She'd been ill, that's why they'd had to do it. They were calling her and harassing her and harassing her and harassing her. And then she had gone back to work and they were calling her work. And so she actually paid the loan over the phone with her credit card. Only to find out when she called the debt company that they had borrowed from to get confirmation of the payment that it wasn't even the company that had loaned them the money. It was just a scam artist who had seen her application, or her husband's application on the internet when they had applied for the loan, and then who had picked their name and just hoping that they hadn't missed a payment, which they had, started harassing them to pay. So she spent several $1,000s paying this bill that wasn't even to the person they owed the money to. It was just a scam. So that information, if you take out any kind of, loan on the internet, that information is out there and scammers can have access to it.
Do these people ever get caught? I mean, like, did this person?
That woman's money is gone. The part of the hard part about these scams, again, is that this money goes out of the country. The Federal Trade Commission is very effective in trying to deal with the nationwide nature of these scams. So as I said to you earlier, they busted an email text scam. Those folks were in the United States. It was in the Southwest where they were located. Unfortunately, a lot of these internet scams, it's really virtually impossible to trace them. If you go on these sites, there's phone numbers, they say you can call them, there's an internet address, but it's not even their domain. They've bought a domain under another name. We spend time at our office trying to track those down, and there is some ways for law enforcement to track those down. So I'm not saying it can never be caught, but it's very difficult to catch businesses that are operating on the internet. So, number 6. This is really more for businesses, but again, we deal with businesses at the Consumer Assistance Program. It can also happen to consumers. What it is just what it says. A bill shows up. It says you owe, $29.95. And a frequent one that businesses are getting is for online yellow pages. So the business manager, thinking it's a legitimate bill, may even pay it, an advertising bill or a phone directory bill or something. But really, they never ordered it, and it's for some online directory that nobody knows how to find and, they can't use. And the important thing is they never ordered it, but they received this advertisement that is in the form of a bill. Looks like a bill. It is a bill, really, and they're hoping you'll just pay it and not check. So we get a lot of complaints from businesses about this. And then, to make it worse, the fake business calls and says, you haven't paid your bill. You owe us. And there's a penalty now, so you need to pay us. And they start these harassing phone calls. Okay, number 7. Security systems. So was it worth playing this call? Could you hear it this morning a little bit? I'll try. So I'll tell you that I'm in my 50s. And the good news is that there are groups like the AARP who are advocating for me, and I can be a member. But the bad news is that because I'm in my 50s, I'm a senior. I'm considered a senior, and I'm on a lot of lists, places, which are sold over the internet, and people get my name, and so I get phone calls for seniors. I don't know if others of you have gotten this.
The American Heart Association and the American Diabetic Association are urging all senior citizens to get a personal life-saving emergency medical alert system for their home. For the first time, a senior medical advisory
Now
is
listen.
providing senior citizens with this life-saving emergency medical alert at no charge to seniors. Press 1 now to find out how with just one push of a button you can have a live certified emergency medical technician on the line to help you in just seconds. Again, press 1 now and you'll
Heard enough? Okay.
He
So
doesn't have his dentures in.
pick your industry. I happen to get we want to help you bring down your credit card rate. I get that one a lot. And then I get this one a lot. Now, security systems, alarm systems, they may be very helpful to individuals in certain situations. And it may lessen anxiety and be just what you need. So what I say is not to say that those aren't valid products to buy. But if somebody calls you and says, guess what, free to you, you need the security system, and it's endorsed by these names that they're throwing out to you who have never endorsed this system, that's a scam. And if you need to buy a system that is, for your home or to protect you if you have medical issues, deal with someone that you know. Call a company that you can get customer service from, that you can deal with. It doesn't be locally or statewide or whatever, but somebody that you know how to get a hold of who can, help you with problems that you're having, and who you know when you pay them you're going to get what you paid for. Don't do it through some phone company or internet service that's promising you a free product. Yes?
Do you have any way to identify companies that are calling when folks are on the do not call list?
So the do not call registry is something that you can enter your phone number in. And just recently, they added cell phone protection. Until this year, I think, your cell phone was not protected. And so many people have now gone to cell phones, so that was kind of difficult. But now you can enter both a landline and a cell phone number in the do not call registry. And that is www.donotcall.gov, and there's also a number there, 888-382-1222, and if you want it, I'll give it to you after. And you want to call from the phone that you want to register with. So, that's the do not call registry. It isn't perfect. It's a good start. It's a good protection. I did it because I'm getting all these phone calls, but I'm still getting those recorded phone calls. And what it stops is it stops telemarketers who are honoring the do not call registry. So you will not, what it is saying is, I don't want those sales calls. I'm opting out of those calls. And so businesses that are honoring the do not call registry you won't get those. You're still going to get scam calls because they're not honoring the do not call registry.
Right.
And you're still going to get a lot of recorded messages, which are typically scams. Not always, but some usually. Yes?
The most recent call I've had is from GE, and it sounds legitimate, but I wouldn't do business with somebody other than I knew in Brattleboro. But I wondered if it is legitimate. You're one of 100 people chosen in the state of Vermont for this free service, blah, blah. But then you end up, you have to pay a monthly fee.
Well, again, I don't want there to be some free service I turn you all away from, but I would never do it over the phone because I think there is going to be a fee. I would never do it just over, email. Again, do what this woman suggested. Get the number, call GE, find out if indeed they're offering you a free program because they want you to do something for them in return or something. But not over the internet, not over email. Okay.
And the latest I've had this last week is from Chimney Services, and when I told them that I only do business locally, they said, well, we are local, from Wilmington, well, they're not registered, they're not in the phone book, and they're not in the, any other place I saw. So of course I wasn't going to, I wish I'd gotten their phone number.
They have the Rhode Island cell phone number, and I know
Is that
that
what
when
it
they call our
is?
ID, they call us 3 times.
So use the internet, if you have internet access, use it to your advantage. Sometimes when I'm doing research for people, when they've filed written complaints with us, and I'm doing the sort of follow-up, I'll just do a Google search, and I'll see that this company that I'm investigating, there's a whole row of people who have complained about them being scammers. So one of the things you should do is, especially if they're contacting you, by email or phone or on the internet, is check the internet itself. Use the internet to your advantage to find out what other people are saying about this business. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to do the research only to find that, 15 people have gone on the internet to say they took my money, they're scammers. Unfortunately, we're not online, so yes, we can tell you what it is, but if you remember my name or write it down, you call me, I'll send them to you in writing. Our information is public, so I'll read it to you, I'll print it out and send it to you. We don't judge the complaints that we have. We don't say this person's guilty or not guilty, but we will say to you if the business has, complaints an arm long, it's not a good sign that you're going to get the customer service that you might want. Next one. So we've really talked about this already. Telemarketing, robocalls. The best thing I can say to you is hang up the phone. Even if you don't have call screening, or you pick up the phone and you realize it's someone trying to sell you something. Even doing that, even talking to them, even being polite with them, causes them to say, oh, there's somebody there who's picking up. Maybe if we call back again, we'll either get that person or we'll get another person. So honestly, unfortunately, the best defense is if you can call screen it and not answer it, or hang up right away without talking. If you hear that it's either a robocall or someone selling you something, because again, these are scattershot calls. They're calling as many people as possible, and they have to, and they're using these lists. So if they know that you answered the phone and you talk to them for a few minutes, even if you ended up hanging up on them, you're going to stay on the list and you're going to get another call, because maybe the next time they're going to get your wife or your daughter or your family member who might talk to them. So best advice we can give you is don't engage on the phone, don't be polite. I said this morning, people of our generation tend to be polite on the phone. We learn not to be, maybe, hopefully, but we learn to be polite, right? We don't want to cut people off. We don't want to interrupt. We want to hear what people have to say before we say, no, thank you, I'm not interested. Again, I'm recommending to you that you hang up the phone. Don't even say anything if you hear on the other end that it's a salesperson that you haven't asked to contact you. You want to know something? I feel guilty about it, but I do it. I look, and if it's an 800 or an 876, I don't look at it. It's 802, I look and I say, do I recognize that number? Sometimes I pick up and I regret it, sometimes I don't. But yeah, I call screen by looking at my call waiting, and I hate not answering the phone. I feel like it's not being impolite, but I'm getting there. I'm telling you to be more impolite than I am. Next one is number 9, online listing scams. So what I mean by this is private sites. Something like Craigslist. Craigslist is a pretty famous one, but there are many sites. It's a great thing. The internet is a great tool, and it's great to be able to sell things and to list things, and it's great to be able to buy things. And so I'm not saying do not use online listing sites to look for goods or services or to sell those. But what I am saying to you is beware. If you're going to sell something on the internet, you want to make sure that you get the money. You don't want to get a check that doesn't, after you put it in the bank and you think it's valid, it isn't going to cash three or 4 days later. You don't, if you're buying something, you want to make sure that you meet the person in person. I mean, the best kind of purchase you can make online is make the transaction, but then meet in person and pay in person, because then you know what you're going to get and you're not going to pay until you get what you want. If you buy on the internet at a site you're not familiar with from someone you don't know, you're taking a risk. So I'm not saying it's a risk to buy from an online retailer who has a very great customer service department. We all buy from very established businesses. They're not risky. They have customer service. You can reach them. You know where they are. But if you're buying from a place on Craigslist and you're buying from Janet Murnane and you don't know Janet Murnane, you're taking a risk. So ask to meet in person, and if you're selling, ask for cash. All right, number 10, loan schemes. So we talked about debt schemes. Loan schemes, scams are, again, sad. These scammers prey on people who are in need. Frequently, people have the need for some short-term cash. They're unemployed, they have had a medical problem, and they make the decision for whatever reason to go typically online and borrow money. And you've seen the commercials on TV if you watch late night TV. Western Sky has one, Montel Williams advertises for one. And by the way, the payday loan organizations that operate from the Indian reservations take the position that they are not subject to U.S. government law, federal law, and that we cannot regulate them. And they've had success in at least one court with that argument. So very difficult to enforce against organizations that work through like Western Sky and other organizations like that. But people take out a loan. It's very expensive. They know it, but they need the money, so they take the loan out. You start getting harassing phone calls. People are threatening, arrests. People are threatening lawsuits. They're threatening financial ruin, and you're getting those calls at your house. You're getting those calls at your place of employment. Unfortunately, it isn't. I mentioned this earlier. It isn't always the company that you borrowed the money from, and so frequently people are out there fishing for these loan schemes and finding people who may have borrowed money and just making these calls to individuals, hoping that they can get a payment from them. And these scammers are worse than the actual debt collectors who may be legitimately trying to collect debt you may owe, because they're going to be even more threatening because they're trying to scare you into paying them first. So it's a scam on a payday loan. And a lot of people, because they're already anxious that they're in this desperate situation, end up making those payments. So they're very damaging. The message there is, if you ever find, or a friend or a family member finds themselves in a situation where they've had to take that step, they should never pay someone who's threatening them or telling them they have to pay the loan over the phone. You can always demand proof of debt, and the legitimate companies are required to give you proof of debt. And then you can pay them, and you can, pay down on the debt, hopefully. Never, never pay those callers over the phone with a credit card. Yes?
I want to say something good about something that happened to me. We went to Pennsylvania. We were there for a couple of days, stayed over and whatever. And when we got home, it was around 11:15. And I got a call in the mail, and call that said, "Sir, what's your no credit card, but date of birth, and is this your correct address?" And all these things to prove supposedly that I was the person they were supposedly. And then they said, "Did you buy things in Connecticut? I mean, in Pennsylvania, in some obscure place that we did not even go to?" And I said, "How can I tell you the information? You could be a scam." I said that on the phone, because what scam would call at that time of night? I sort of thought they were good. I said, "You have to give me some information if you're the credit card company, this MasterCard," and so it took them a while, before they would tell me over the phone information that they couldn't possibly have. And then I found, after that, when I said, "No, we did not do that. Somebody spent $4,000 worth of stuff in this obscure," I didn't know the town, it wasn't obscure. And so in the end, I said, "Well, did they have plans? Where are your credit cards?" I said, "We have them. Both of our credit cards were in my hand." And they said, "Well, how did they do that? Didn't they have it?" And they have made up a plastic credit card that from just knowing our numbers, somewhere along the line, went somewhere, somebody got the numbers, and they actually made a plastic credit card that worked at the stores. And they were giving me a lot of good information about scammers, that how fast they could make. It had to be within, I would say, a couple days.
No, an hour.
Right.
An hour.
They did not pay. They denied pay, and they wanted to know from me if I had done that before. So it was
So was it
And
the store or the credit card company calling you?
the credit card company denied those two things
Yes.
because it was out of the things we would do. One
Yes.
was at Walmart, another was at unusual places we do not usually shop at, and for a lot of money. So they denied it, and then once they said, okay, and then we have to change your last numbers of your credit card. So that was on Friday. And on Monday, they said it's a new card, that fast. So it was so good to hear that the credit card company has computers that would say, those, and we were traveling too, paying motels or whatever.
Right. I mentioned earlier that using credit cards is great for one reason, because they have some protection for you. So there is a federal law. I mean, the credit card company, I'm glad they did it, but they do it for a reason. The reason they call you with those fraud alerts is for a reason. Because there is a federal law, the Fair Credit Billing Act, that allows a consumer to report fraud. And I know you didn't report, but fraud, and the credit card company is going to have to end up paying that bill. So frequently, I get fraud checks if I travel out, if I go to Montreal or if I go to New York, or just across the lake. A lot of credit card companies are gotten a lot tighter about it. So they're going to call you even if you haven't reported it, and they're going to say, are these your charges? Because they watch your pattern of buying. They know, they can see where you normally travel. And if this is a trip or a location that is out of the norm for you, they're going to call and check. But the reason they do it is they don't want to be on the hook for that $4,000, because when you saw it on your bill, you would have called them and said, hey, I wasn't in Pennsylvania, I didn't charge that. They would have had to do an investigation, and under the Fair Credit Billing Act, you can only be held liable if you've reported it once you get your bill. They can only hold you liable for a very small amount. So it's for an important reason. It's a very, very important federal law, and it's a great protection. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, report it as soon as you find out, either because they've called you and then you're confirming that yes, that's a fraud, or you get your bill. Some people bank online and can see charges as they come up. I mean, there's a number of ways people look, but yes.
Sometimes when we go, all the time when we travel out of the country, we call American Express and say we're going to be in London, we're going to be in Italy.
I do that now.
And I've been doing that for the last 15 years or so.
Did you learn the hard way like I did, though?
No.
I went to Montreal one weekend with my family, and my credit card didn't work. I went to use it and it didn't work because I hadn't called ahead. I don't go to Montreal very often, and they froze my credit cards because they thought it was stolen. It's smart to do, and then you're protected, and
this way
they're protected.
You're not going to have a problem getting a charge denied.
That's right. You don't want to be in Montreal with no money, believe me. The standard old-fashioned advice about be careful about giving out your credit card number in a restaurant or in a sales situation, be careful about throwing out your mail and not shredding it, all those things still stand. It's just now we also have the internet to contend with. But yes, I mean, someone can hear your credit card number, write it down if they have the means. Who was saying someone got a number? You were, right?
Yeah.
So someone this morning opened a checking account. No ATM, no debit card, no credit card number with it, and someone from the bank used her, it was not in Vermont, used her account number and did a withdrawal in that state. Luckily the bank called to confirm, but people, there is still the old-fashioned theft of somebody just hears the number, writes it down, and has some means of either duplicating it or submitting it for payment. So all the old ways are still in place too. So hang up the phone. Don't respond to unknown emails. Don't give out personal information if you're not the one generating the call. Don't buy on the internet unless you've researched the seller or the company, and don't wire money until you check that the person on the other end is really who you want to send it to. About a month ago, the FTC, again, the federal government agency, the Federal Trade Commission that regulates fraud, does a terrific job, had to report that their letterhead was being used in an email scam. Someone had just reproduced their letterhead, sent it out, and said, I mean, it's FBI, Federal Trade Commission.
Well, when in doubt, you just delete.
I work for the state of Vermont in the Attorney General's office. We're all lawyers, right? We're doing enforcement against consumer fraud. We get scam texts at work. I mean, and they look like they're official. They look like, there was one that went recently to all state government. It looked like it was official from the State Department that does, but if you look closely, the email address is different. But if you don't look closely, you read it quickly, like we all read emails, you might respond. You have to be just careful. Is that it? Oh, yeah, okay, so it's hard to read backwards. So if you do know someone that has become a victim, here are some steps that you can recommend. Keep all records. If there's been any wire transfers or any postal money orders, the postal inspector is a great resource. We use them. So keep any records like that. Keep credit card company records. File a police report. If there's been payments made, file a police report. The police may say, ma'am, we can't help you, or sir, we can't help you. File the police report so there's a record that you've reported to law enforcement that money's been stolen from you. Because frequently the companies that you're going to be dealing with, the credit card company or the other company, is going to want to know. They're going to want to verify that this was really fraud. And if you've reported it to the police, they're going to believe that it's fraud. So it's just another protection for you if you've been victimized. Again, we talked about the credit card report. If it's a credit card, make sure that you report it right away, and hopefully you'll be protected and get your money back. Credit reporting. So you know there are 3 credit reporting agencies. Fax, TransUnion, thank you so much. And you can get an annual credit report, actually 2 annual credit reports each year as a Vermonter, which is more than other states, free. So you can check your credit history. And the site that you use to do that is annualcreditreport.com. There's a lot of ads out there and on the internet, a lot of advertisements for get your credit report free. Even freecreditreport.com. It's not free. When you get on there, they want you to pay to get your credit report. You are entitled to 2 free credit history reports every year, and you can do it by going to annualcreditreport.com. And even when you go there, they're going to say, oh, if you only pay $9.95, then you can get your credit rating. So if you want your credit rating, if it's something that's important to you because you're applying for a loan and you want to know what the banks are going to know, you can pay that extra money, but you don't need to. If the reason you're going on your credit report is to find out if any more accounts have been opened, so if you've been the victim of fraud, a good thing to do is go check your credit report and see if there's any new accounts being opened, if anything's happening there that you haven't authorized. Because if there is, then they'll give you instruction on what you can do to stop it. You can do a credit freeze, you can do a fraud report, and those are all explained on the site. That would stop, well, the credit freeze will stop other transactions from going through. The fraud report is just sort of a red flag for people who are checking. So you want to do that to make sure that no new credit accounts are opened. And the last thing is file a complaint with the Consumer Assistance Program. Again, there are other sites as well. The Federal Trade Commission has a complaint database, as does the Better Business Bureau, but we're happy to take your complaint, give you information, and try to assist you. If you think that person is prone to sort of taking phone calls, or if they're buying things online, if you see any danger signs that they're buying things that they shouldn't be buying, that might be a very good thing to do. If there was any concern that somehow any of her information was exposed, yes. But with respect to the death of a loved one, it might be a step that you should take, yeah. At some point, they're going to recognize that that person's not authorized to open any more accounts, but until that time, it would probably be a safe thing to do. If we see that it's a new scam, we do a press release. And if we do a press release and the papers pick it up or the media picks it up, we're not the only place you can make a complaint. You can call your police department if you think it's really a local matter, and if it's a business actually that's targeting a particular town. But call and complain. Call someone and complain.
254-7950. That's the dispatch at the Fireborough Police Department. Go on call 911.
And the media wants to help consumers. The media is very responsive to these things. I've had, if they're hearing that people are being scammed, they want to know, and they're happy to do public service announcements on it. So the other thing is your local media, I bet would appreciate the call. Yes?
Question is, what about these wallets that are now coming in metal so that people can't have pictures taken of what's inside their wallets? They're advertised, these metal wallets.
Who knows about that? So will you say that more loudly so that people can hear? I don't know about
I
it.
think it's so that they can't read the magnetic strip.
Yeah, people can walk by you after,
Right,
you know, and
and say it
scan
right.
things. I mean, you know, it's like nuts.
See, there's the good and the bad. If you buy a ticket at Snow Mountain Resort for you skiers out there, now you don't buy a ticket anymore and put a ticket on your coat. What you do is you have a card and it's in your pocket and you pay, and then they don't even have to open your pocket, they just scan it. So there's good news with scanning and having things on magnetic cards, but obviously they can be used for the wrong reasons too. So I haven't heard about the wallets, so I'm sorry.
The,
Obituaries? Does the AARP have any good advice on that? Is there something you shouldn't put in obituaries? Is there some information that you shouldn't put in there? I mean, that is such a hard question. I mean, they're there to inform us that our friends and loved ones have passed, and you know, we want to see the information, but safety does matter, so
Yeah, I mean, you know, anything with the address of the deceased is probably a bad idea.
I have to say, my father recently passed, and I was with my mother at the funeral home, and he said to us, don't put your address in the paper. And have someone at your home when you go to the service and the mass, because you know, that's something we recommend at this point. I was like, you're kidding me, this is ridiculous, you know, but we locked the door anyway, and we didn't put the address in the paper. So I guess that's the answer, is they really recommend that you not put the address in anymore.
You want to give the time and the date of the services, so you really can't avoid that if indeed you're trying to you know, inform friends and family. So it's a tough one.
You don't want your mother's maiden name.
Oh, because it's a security question. You're very smart. That's the other reason too. The banks, when you said sometimes they ask you questions so that you can confirm it's the right person, that's why they ask those security questions. Of course, I can never remember which ones or which company and which answers, but that's why you try to pick ones that you will remember and use the same ones, even though they tell you to vary them. So, yes.
When my dad passed away, we listed all the relatives and all the names of the grandchildren and so forth. And within a couple of months, my mother got a call from someone saying he was my grandson and that he was in trouble. And she said, call your mother, and hung up on him. So.
Good. I mean, I hope the answer to that can be we can educate each other and we can still have a nice story in the paper about all of this. So, yes?
Just similar to what you were talking about with the wallet. I remember I was using an ATM, and the gentleman before me said his son worked in some kind of electronics industry, and that when you're using your card, they can actually use some kind of a reader as you pass by, that they can detect the numbers. And he also said, even if you have it in your pocket, in your wallet. And I wasn't sure about that. I thought, that sounds impossible.
That's like that metal thing that someone was talking about.
Yeah. Anything that's embedded can be read if people have the equipment to read them. But, you know, we haven't gotten that report. You know, we haven't gotten complaints about that, but is that technology out there? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And I really appreciate all of you taking the time to listen and share what's happened to you, and to hopefully pass on the information. Thanks a lot, and call us. Thank you to the AARP for holding us today.